Texas Legislature just passed a plan for redrawing the state's congressional districts that could help Republicans win 5 more seats in the U.S. House, as called for last month by President Trump. It goes next for expected signing by Governor Greg Abbott. Now, a lawsuit against the governor has been filed, alleging that the redrawn districts are racially discriminatory. Now, this 67-page complaint against Abbott and the Secretary of State, Jane Nelson, supplements legal action filed by LULAC back in 2021 that challenges the state's original maps, argues that redrawing districts mid-decade is unconstitutional. The National Redistricting Foundation, which brought LULAC's initial lawsuit, is also directing this new case. We've got Ann Johnson joining us, right? We're joining right now. She's a Democrat from Houston. Now, if you have comments or questions for Representative Johnson, you can also call us at 713-440-8870.
Yeah, not quite with us yet.
Oh,
okay. But I tell you, I want to ask her a lot of the same questions we were talking to Carol Alvarado about. You know, Carol tried that filibuster. It was squashed by Republicans before it even got going. And so the question is, where do you go? What do you do? And joining us now is State Representative Ann Johnson, a Democrat from Houston. Ms. Johnson, thank you for being here. I see you on our Zoom call. So
good afternoon.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So I tell you, it's like you've tried everything. What's next?
Well, the next is to the courts. And we expected this, and we're prepared for the fact that we needed to get on the record the evidence that could be used by the courts to determine that this is absolutely a violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights. It is an attempt to crack and pack districts, to eliminate power of minority communities, which is protected by the Civil Act right. And so I think that the courts should do the right thing. The Fifth Circuit recently ruled that Louisiana had taken similar steps. And so I am still optimistic that the courts will correct this injustice.
Well, if they find this, what was done along racial lines in just one of the redistricted areas, not all 5, but just one, would that be enough to throw it all out? Or would the courts just say, you know what, you got to go redraw that one?
Well, it means you have to redraw. And don't forget, there's 2 cases. There's the case out of El Paso, where we're already dealing with the fact that we believe the maps that they drew in 2021 were also discriminatory. Now you add on top of it that this really is a steal of 5 seats before the next election. Don't forget, this just started percolating a few months ago. Trump went on the media and said it's a simple draw. You change the districts, I can win 5 seats. But the effect of drawing those districts were to eliminate districts that are by people chosen by communities of color, and to turn them into seats that will be elected by white GOP. That is discriminatory. And so you have 2 issues that have come out of this most recent thing, which is mid-district gerrymandering, which nobody likes, and it's not even supposed to happen now. And the only way that you could increase your partisan score was to do it on the backs of Black and brown people. And that is a violation of the Constitution.
You know, Ann Johnson, there is just there's no argument about the fact that this is blatantly a play to add 5 more congressional seats. Nobody seems to make excuses for that at this point. And I recall back when Tom DeLay tried this a couple of decades ago, they talked about other things. The reason we're calling a special session isn't really redistricting. We got some budgetary things we got to worry about. It seems like the conversation is much more candid, and the motives are much more clear, I suppose you'd say. No one is trying to disguise the fact that this is a power play, in effect. The mood seems to have changed over these decades.
Well, and that's in part because the United States Supreme Court has said that you can try to increase your partisan score. And that's why they keep saying this is just about partisanship. But that's why it's important for everybody to recognize in this circumstance, you cannot increase your partisan score without doing it on the backs of disenfranchising Black and brown individuals, which is what makes it unconstitutional. And so while Republicans keep claiming that it's just a one-step process and all they care about is partisanship, you can't deny the facts and the evidence that the only way they get there is by disenfranchising Black and brown voters. And so one of my colleagues talked about the fact that if you look in Texas right now, by the way these maps are drawn, for every one white Republican voter, you need Black African American voters to overcome that political power. For every one white Republican voter, you need 3 Hispanic voters to try to overcome that political power. That is negating and taking away the concept constitutionally of one voice, one vote. And so it is absolutely unconstitutional, and why we need the courts to step in. But as a Democrat, one of the other things that we've tried to do is to highlight the fact that this is just a blatant steal and disruption and corruption of the process and the way that it's supposed to work. And why nationally, we wanted people to see what they're doing in Texas, because if you let them get away with it in Texas and you just roll over and say, no problem, do create mid-decade redistricting. Don't forget, this whole week, when we tried to question them on the maps, there's not a single Republican that could say that they were part of it. They had somebody send money to a law firm and got maps drawn on them, and they did it. Everything about this is corrupted. Everything about this is wrong. None of this is actually rooted in the people of Texas. And so we are highlighting not only the wrong that everybody can see, but we're highlighting the injustice of the unconstitutionality and the manner in which they did it.
Representative Johnson, you've been very forthcoming to call this out as blatant racism. That's the big R word, right?
It is.
I mean, you've been very forthcoming. But this is a racist
and,
play, not just a power play, but a racist play.
It is, because I'll tell you, my dad was in the legislature in the 60s. I grew up around Barbara Jordan. My dad was one of the people that knew that helping her get elected as the first African-American woman from the South to Congress was significant, not only for every Houstonian, but to the civil rights movement. And he was very active as a white man of power and privilege to acknowledge that his strength was his ability to help people that didn't look like him have a seat at government, to help ensure that government worked for everybody. And so as I sat around the room the other day and looked around and looked at many of my colleagues and the way that they shook their head at me, I feel this pain and this sorrow that the Texas House and Texas as a state really used to be about Texas and about civil rights and about the fact that anybody could make it and have an opportunity. And to see that we are here in a sham special session purely because they want to give Trump 5 seats because he's afraid of the next election. And the only way that they can do it is to disenfranchise and get unelected people that have been selected by Black and brown folks. I'm so offended. And I do pray and hope that everybody that gets how wrong this is will just step up and say, look, I've had it. I've had enough. You can no longer shield the idea of what you're doing to hurt people is wrapped around the concept of partisanship. We are better than that. And there's a job that I have to do to the Constitution and to every voter. When I got elected and I raised my hand, I don't just represent people from my primary. I represent everybody in the district. That's the job. That's supposed to be the job. You can run as a Democrat or a Republican, but ultimately we're supposed to uphold this oath to the Constitution. And at some point, we have to be bigger about being on the floor and not just be blatantly partisan. And that's what hurts me right now in this moment.
All right. We're talking to State Representative Ann Johnson, a Democrat from Houston. If you'd like to comment or have a question for Ms. Johnson, 713-440-8870. There is some pushback from Republicans who say this happens in blue states, maybe through commissions. There could be a difference, maybe not, maybe or maybe not racially divided. But it does happen in Democratic states too. And of course, Democrats don't complain about that.
I mean, I disagree because I call for an independent commission to redraw lines.
Well,
I
right.
would love to see an independent commission nationwide. Democrats voted for H.R. 1 a few years ago to say that we need an independent commission in every state to ensure that the voters are drawing the line, to ensure that there is some fairness and competition on general election day. And I support that. I would love to see that. I would also love to see campaign finance reform so that we can get back to having debates around policy and letting people select it without just having an overrun of extreme partisanship or extreme money and power in political campaigns. I mean, don't forget, Texas, we have an unlimited amount of contributions. It's why Governor Abbott was able to take $12 million from a guy named Yaz out of Pennsylvania to help pass a voucher scam. I mean, we've really lost our way. and we need to correct it. So I would love to see us all put down our swords and go to an independent commission. The reason blue states are trying to respond is because you have now seen Trump say Texas will roll over, and Texas is. And now he's trying to get other red states to do the same thing and completely eliminate. And again, this is the issue, completely eliminate the voice of Black and brown voters, which is protected by the Voting Rights Act. And so we know that certain communities need to be protected based on our Civil Rights Act. And that's what states should do and draw it. And this particular draw is blatantly unconstitutional in that respect.
But of course, Representative Johnson, ultimately, the Supreme Court could end up deciding this. The Supreme Court of the United States gutted the Voting Rights Act, which you just mentioned. What makes you optimistic that they might reach a different decision in this case?
Well, I'm a public servant and I run for office every 2 years, which means, and I'm a Democrat in Texas, which means I have high hopes. I know what it means to put your hand up and swear an oath. I still have faith in people in elected office. I still have faith that their conscience will do the right thing. And so, yes, I can't predict what they'll do in the future, but I know that this is the only place we can go at this point. It was impossible for Democrats to stay in a quorum break until next May. Republicans in the state legislature did not reach their conscience and did not say, Trump, we're going to say no. Don't forget, when Georgia Republicans were asked to steal an election, they said, no, we won't do this for you. Texas Republicans have said yes to Trump, and I hope voters make them pay for that. I think it is blatantly, inherently wrong. You're supposed to serve your people, not Trump. And again, not one of them can say they had anything to do with these maps. They took it from a law firm that was paid to draw it. And you heard Trump say, simple draw, and I can get myself 5 more seats. We're not supposed to serve Trump. We're supposed to serve our people. And so all I can do is pray that the United States Supreme Court will do the right thing. They should. If you look at the law, if you look at the way the courts have ruled on these issues since the 1970s, they should do the right thing. But again, if they don't, it is up to the voters and it's up to people to correct and right the ship.
Do you think there's been some suggestion that AI drew these maps?
And that's a problem. I don't know. So
Right.
when we were on the floor and asked the bill author who drew these maps, how did they come about? He couldn't answer it. And so people should be really offended. I mean, go back and look at it. Not only did we ask questions, we were given, so you have rules on the House on how long you can debate. Somebody goes to offer something, you can have 20 minutes to do debate, and then you can ask for extensions. They would only give us one 10-minute extension. And so normally when you're having a robust debate about something this significant that impacts 30 million Texans, you would let everybody ask their questions. But every time we said, hey, I have more questions about this, can I have more time? It would go to a vote and the Republicans would say, no, Democrats can't ask any more questions. And so we'll see what happens in the court case. But we didn't have these maps when they came to do hearings in Houston or Arlington or other cities. They dropped the maps. They did one hearing in Austin, and 24 hours later, they voted the next day, and the next day in calendars, they put it on. Nobody got to ask the questions. I don't think we have the answer to that question. I still don't know who drew the maps. We know elected officials did not draw the maps. And so that's why it should offend everybody, the manner in which, as they said, they are doing this because they can.
Well,
They literally,
if I could
Go
point
ahead.
something out, though, traditionally, you say that the legislators didn't draw the maps. Well, traditionally, consultants draw these maps of some kind. It's not like Representative so-and-so from Del Rio actually gets his hands dirty drawing lines. He works with other people. So how is there something inherently wrong with calling in someone else to draw these lines?
So if you go back and talk with folks like Chairman Paul Colbert back in the day when he would do redistricting, the manner in which, and even for us in 2021 when we did redistricting, yes, you have draws, but then you look at it, you work on it, people come and testify on it, and lines moved all the way to the last minute. I mean, just go look back at the debate in 2021. There was nothing like that in this circumstance. There wasn't a single map that was dropped before we had hearings for people to say, wow, I look at where my precinct's cut out of my old district. That means I'm separated from my community of which I've had voting power and strength to get the elected official to pay attention to us on housing or any other issues. None of that happened. because they literally did not drop the map until the day before they voted on it, which was 2 days before they tried to put it in calendars. I mean, this was a sham process. And anytime they say this was transparent, you really ought to kind of laugh out loud. And so, yes, of course, in doing redistricting, there are lots of folks that come to the table and work on it, but it is done under oath in hearings where the voters can ask questions. And that's my point. When we got to the floor and said, hey, where did these maps come from? Well, they came from a law firm. Well, who drew them? None of us. And so it should offend people that we're taking this to the extreme, that they literally just keep saying, we think we can steal 5 seats and we're going to do it. And so until there's pushback from voters or courts, the Republicans have shown they have no moral backbone to say no to Trump or the extremism that he is now putting out that affects 30 million Texans.
Representative Johnson, we appreciate all that you've been saying. We've had some chatter on YouTube about whether or not we're going to hear from Republicans. We will add that Representative Kane Briscoe will be on our show tomorrow to talk about the Republicans' position and, you know, where they stand on all these issues.
Don't forget, he is taking advantage of having a new district drawn that he's going to run in.
Yeah,
and so that's the rhetoric that's out there. So again, are these people representing you and giving you a chance to select who you want in D.C., or did they work really hard to get themselves some seats? So great. I'm glad he's going to be on. Ask him who drew his potential new district for him. I'm offended.
That's a fair question. That's a fair question. So thank you so much for being on again. We really
it's good
appreciate
to see y'all.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Hard work. All right.
And Houston, I'm ready to come home. We all miss you. It's time for us to all come home. Look forward to seeing my friends and neighbors.
All right. Safe travels, Representative Ann
Thank
Johnson.
y'all.